Hello and welcome to Sportlog Tutorials. In this tutorial, we're going to be covering the customization of zones, training groups, and day options in Sportlog. So as a coach or as an athlete, to access these features, you need to go into your settings section, which can be found in this drop-down menu over here. And inside settings, you can find groups and coaches, zones, and day options. Let's start with groups and coaches. So training groups represent different divisions among the athletes that you're a coach of. And let's say you just have a large group of athletes and you want to separate them into slightly different training groups with different maybe training zones or day options that they can record. This is the way that you do it in this section. So right now I have two different training groups set up, a masters group and then a test group down here with just a couple athletes. Within each group, I've got coaches which have access to this group. In this case, I've got one coach, and they are an administrator. Be careful about who you give administration access to, because they have the ability to set zones, set training options for any of the athletes in the group, and they can even kick you out. So they have a lot of power. Just be careful about who has access to the group. In order for your athletes to be able to join these groups, they just go into their settings sections and search for a training group. In this case, they would search for the Knacker Talk Masters group, and they would put in this registration code. The registration code is something that you set, and we'll go through that in a second, and you just have to tell the athletes what the registration code is so that they have access. Once they've joined the group, you'll see a little notification here, so you can see I've got Mike has joined my test group, so this is an athlete that has joined my test group a little bit lower down here, this guy right here. If you want to add more coaches to the group, you can just type it in at this section here. Coaches who have paid coaching accounts will be able to access the group that or you can give them permission to access the groups that you've set up. It's important to note that only athletes who have paid Sportlog accounts can be added to groups and have coaches view their logs. So I'll just show you this process real quickly here. I'll create a new group, give it a registration code, and make its primary training type. Let's do swimming. Save that, and I've created a new group. I'll add another coach to the group. Oops, just give it a sec to reload here. There you go. I'll add a new coach to the group. Head coach, and I trust this guy, so I'll make him an administrator. So athletes will have to add me, as I said, from their end using the searching for the group name and then adding in the registration code. You can also look at athletes' logs individually, so they can individually give you access to the logs, their logs, and if they do, that'll appear down here. And if you no longer want to look at their logs, you can simply delete them here. This is all explained up top here in both the athlete and coach sections of Sportlog. Let's take a look at zones. So training zones refer to intensity at which exercise is occurring and can be measured in a whole bunch of different variables, heart rate, rate of perceived exertion, wattage, etc., etc., etc. So different sports are going to have slightly different training zones, and different coaches are going to have different ways that they perceive these training zones. So as a coach or as an athlete, if you want to set up zones, this is where you do it. So I'm going to show you how to set up zones for one of my groups here. So I'll choose my test group. So right now, this is a custom zone set that I have for these athletes. So I just made this up. Pretty straightforward. I'll add a zone to see how it goes. Let's make this the easy zone. Short name, easy. Choose a color for it, and this is the color that's going to appear in the Sportlog calendar. So you can color code things so you can see when athletes are going hard or going easy. Make this green, and I'll save this custom zone set. The page is just going to refresh here in a second. There we go. So now that custom zone. So all those athletes in that group are now going to be logging their workouts based on those zones. So whenever they log those specific workouts, those zones are the options that come up for those athletes. I mean, obviously those aren't very useful zones, so you probably want to use something a little bit more scientific. We have in Sportlog, most of the sports have very specific zones for them, either physiological or strength-based training zones. So here we go, use one of sports default zones. Normally, groups will have the inherent default zone set associated with the group's primary workout type. So if you're a runner or a skier or an endurance-based athlete, this is what's going to show up. And these are kind of the major endurance-based training zones based on the latest research and evidence in terms of training. They also have some strength-based training zones down here, and again, focusing on the major strength-based areas. If you don't like these, hey, you can create your own, but this is what we've set up as just a basic area to get started. So that's pretty much it for zone sets. One thing I just recommend is that you try not to change zones very often, especially that will have difficulty in terms of the analysis section of your of Sportlog or of your login specifically. If you have a set of zones at the beginning of the year and then a set of zones that are halfway through the year, in order to get the full picture over the course of the year, you'll have to make sure that you filter for all those different zones to see them correctly and see how they lay out and how they compare to each other. The last thing that you can do on Sportlog is you can also change the day options and customize those based on your training group. So I just clicked on day options here. I'm going to select a training group. We'll go again to my test group. And here are the day options that they have available to them. These are the default day options. But I can delete any of these if I'd like, or turn them off so they can't see them, or I can add a new day option. So we have things like sleep, resting, heart rate, feel, nap on here. I'm going to create one called HRV, which is heart rate variability. Short name, I'll just call it HV. Units, I guess this is, I don't actually need units for this one, that's fine. And type, we'll just do average here. And I will save the settings and the page will reload, and that now will appear on the day options for that athlete. The difference between average and sum, you can read about that in the day options. I'll just go back there and show you that real quick. So it tells you sort of what the difference between the units are and the day options here. So all the information that you need is there. So that's an overview of how you can set up groups, how you can customize zones, and customize day options as a coach for your athletes. The athletes, you have some of this functionality built into your programs, but you'll have to explore that a little bit more to understand what you can and cannot do. And these things are all explained in little info boxes and at the top of each section in Sportlog. Thanks for choosing Sportlog, and have a great day.